10 legendary fighters were just the beginning. World War II also needed dive bombers, torpedo planes, night fighters and transports to actually win the war. The SBD C-47 and PBY looked slow and outdated, but these workhorses won the ugly, unseen battles the sleek fighters couldn't. This is how 10 more American warplanes really fought World War II, and why their crews and field mods mattered more than factory specs. Douglas SBD Dauntless, the dive bomber that won the Pacific. Wright R-1820, Cyclone Radial, 1,200 horsepower. Entered service 1940. Top speed, 255 miles per hour at 14,000 feet. Armed with 2 forward .50 caliber guns and 2 rear-facing .30 caliber guns. Could carry one 1,000-pound bomb under the fuselage plus 2 250-pounders under the wings, approximately 5,900 built. It was slow, looked outdated. Sank 4 Japanese carriers at Midway in 5 minutes. Changed the entire war. The Dauntless operated from aircraft carriers across the Pacific. Precision dive bombing from 15,000 to 20,000 feet. Diving at 70 degrees. Releasing bombs between 2,500 and 1,500 feet altitude. It sank more Japanese shipping than any other Allied aircraft. 4 carriers at Midway. Battleship Hiei off Guadalcanal. Cruiser Mikuma. The list goes on. It also served as reconnaissance platform, flying photo missions over Japanese-held islands. The Dauntless worked in tropical conditions that grounded sophisticated aircraft, simple, reliable, deadly. Carrier space limited modifications, but crews improvised. Maintenance crews often removed rear seat armor plate to improve gunners' field of fire, officially discouraged, widely done. Some squadrons replaced twin .30 caliber rear guns with single .50 caliber. Better defensive firepower against zeros. Pilots learned the critical entry speed. 240 miles per hour indicated. Faster caused control problems. Slower reduced accuracy. Mechanics discovered they could increase bomb load to 1,600 pounds total for short-range strikes. Stressed the airframe beyond specifications, but heavily defended targets demanded it. Experienced dive bomber pilots developed the jinking technique. Random movements during pullout. Spoiled anti-aircraft predictions. Never mentioned in manuals. Taught pilot to pilot. Saved countless lives. The Dauntless won the Battle of Midway and proved dive bombing's effectiveness. Its weakness was slow speed. Vulnerable to fighters without escort, but it was accurate, reliable, and available when America needed it most. The Japanese learned something at Midway. 4 carriers lost, all to 1 aircraft type. The obsolete-looking SBD, that's not luck, that's lethality. Grumman TBF Avenger, America's primary torpedo bomber. Wright R-2600 double cyclone radial, 1,900 horsepower. First combat June 1942 at Midway. Disastrous debut. 5 out of 6 shot down. Top speed 275 miles per hour at 16,500 feet. Armed with 1 forward .50 caliber gun, 1 dorsal .50 caliber turret, and 1 ventral .30 caliber gun. Could carry either 2,000-pound torpedo, 2,000 pounds of bombs, or depth charges. Grumman and General Motors built 9,839. That Midway disaster, it learned, adapted, became the most effective torpedo bomber of the war. Torpedo attacks against Japanese shipping. Approach at wave-top height at 200 miles per hour. Launch torpedoes from 1,000 yards. Later, the Avenger evolved beyond torpedoes. Level bomber against ground targets. Anti-submarine patrols with depth charges. That spacious internal bomb bay accommodated various weapons. Late war, Avengers conducted night attacks using radar, hunting Japanese ships in total darkness. It operated from carriers across the Pacific, from escort carriers in the Atlantic. Versatile, adaptable, The Avenger did whatever the mission required. Field modifications focused on increasing effectiveness. Many units replaced the ventral .30 caliber gun with .50 caliber. Better defense against attacking fighters. Some squadrons removed the belly gun position entirely. Weight savings. Better for anti-submarine work, where fighters weren't the threat. Mechanics discovered the R2600 engine could handle prolonged low-altitude operations if oil coolers were adjusted. Factory settings caused overheating at sea level. Field adjustments fixed it. Radar-equipped night attack variants got improvised radar scopes mounted where bombardiers normally sat. Crews fabricated these modifications in carrier machine shops. Avenger pilots learned to coordinate attacks. One aircraft draws anti-aircraft fire high. Others come in low with torpedoes. Pure combat-developed tactics. Some units installed additional fuel tanks in the bomb bay for extended anti-submarine patrols. 8-hour missions over Atlantic. Hunting U-boats required endurance more than payload. The Avenger started with the worst combat debut imaginable. 5 losses out of 6 aircraft at Midway. But it ended the war as the premier torpedo bomber. That's not just improvement. That's complete redemption. The Japanese carriers that survived Midway, Avengers sank most of them later. Poetic justice delivered by the aircraft they'd nearly wiped out. Douglas, a 20 Havoc. Fast light bomber and attack aircraft. 2 Wright R260 twin cyclone radials, 1,600 horsepower each. Entered service 1941. Maximum speed 339 miles per hour at 12,400 feet. One of the fastest light bombers of the war. Armed with up to 9 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns in Strafer variants. Could carry 2,000 pounds of bombs internally. Over 7,000 built. The British called it Boston. The Soviets received over 3,000 and loved it. Americans used it for everything from intruder missions to ground attack. Ground attack and night intruder missions. The A-20 operated most effectively below 10,000 feet, using speed and maneuverability to evade enemy fighters. Soviet forces used them extensively on the Eastern Front. Americans employed it for armed reconnaissance, hitting enemy transport and communication targets. The Royal Air Force flew it as night intruder over occupied Europe. Speed was survival. The A-20 could outrun many interceptors at low altitude. It also served in North Africa, Pacific Theater, Mediterranean. Everywhere fast attack aircraft were needed. Field modifications increased firepower dramatically. Many units removed the bombardier position. Installed solid nose packed with .50 caliber machine guns. Sometimes 12 forward-firing weapons total. Absolutely devastating against ground targets. Ground crews added improvised armor plating around oil coolers. Small arms fire kept puncturing them. Some squadrons experimented with external gun pods under wings. Degraded handling. Most removed them after trials. Pilots learned to approach targets at extremely low altitude, sometimes below 50 feet. German anti-aircraft guns couldn't track effectively that low. Mechanics discovered they could remove bomb bay doors entirely for better cooling during prolonged low-level flight in hot climates. Increased drag significantly, but prevented engine overheating. Pacific units needed this modification. The A-20's speed meant crews could often escape fighter interception, stay low, run at full throttle. Most fighters couldn't catch them below 5,000 feet. The Havoc was fast, tough, and deadly against ground targets. Its weakness was limited bomb load compared to medium bombers, but for rapid strike missions requiring speed over payload, outstanding. The Soviets proved it. Over 3,000 A-20s on the Eastern Front. They wouldn't have taken them if they didn't work. Sometimes the best endorsement comes from the Army doing the hardest fighting. Northrop P-61 Black Widow, America's purpose-built night fighter, 2 Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp radials, 2,000 horsepower each. First combat operations mid-1944. Top speed 366 miles per hour at 20,000 feet. armed with 4 20mm cannons in belly and 4.50 caliber machine guns in dorsal turret. Carried SCR-720 airborne intercept radar in the nose, approximately 700 built. First American aircraft designed from the start as night fighter. Big, black, deadly in darkness. Cost a fortune to develop. Took years to perfect. Night interception of German and Japanese bombers. The P-61 operated in total darkness using radar. Radar operator in rear seat guided pilot to target. Effective from sea level to 30,000 feet. It hunted V-1 flying bombs over Europe. Intercepted Japanese bombers over Pacific Islands. The Black Widow could also serve as night intruder, hunting enemy aircraft over their own airfields, or ground attack against targets of opportunity. That radar made it effective when other aircraft were blind. Some units flew weather reconnaissance. The radar could map weather formations at night. Field modifications focused on improving capabilities. Many squadrons removed the dorsal turret. Weight savings, improved performance. Most kills came from the belly cannons anyway. Some units installed additional fuel tanks in the turret position. Extended range for long patrol missions. Mechanics learned to adjust the SCR-720 radar beyond factory specifications. Better detection range, shorter maintenance intervals but worth it. Pilots developed combat techniques unique to night fighting. Use radar to position behind and below target. Enemy never sees you coming. Fire belly cannons at close range. Some units painted the aircraft even flatter black than factory finish. Regular black paint still reflected moonlight slightly. Field-applied ultra-flat black eliminated even that. Crews discovered the R2800 engines needed different mixture settings for night operations. Reduced visible exhaust flame. Factory settings created bright exhaust at night. But here's the irony that shocked commanders. America's sophisticated purpose-built night fighter scored fewer kills than makeshift conversions. P-38s with radar pods. P-70s converted from A-20s. Even British Mosquitoes on loan. All cheaper, all simpler, all more effective. The Black Widow worked, but it proved something uncomfortable. Sometimes throwing money and technology at a problem doesn't beat practical improvisation. The Germans learned night fighting with converted day fighters. America spent millions developing the perfect solution, and discovered the cheap solution worked better. Boeing B-29 Superfortress, the most advanced bomber of World War II. 4 right, R3350 duplex cyclone radials. 2,200 horsepower each. First combat missions 1944. Maximum speed 357 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Armed with 12.50 caliber machine guns in remote-controlled turrets plus 120mm cannon in tail. Could carry 20,000 pounds of bombs. Pressurized cabin for high-altitude operations. Nearly 4,000 built. Cost more than the Manhattan Project. Ended the war by dropping 2 atomic bombs. August 1945. Strategic bombing of Japan. The B-29 operated at altitudes up to 33,000 feet, beyond reach of most Japanese fighters. Struck Japanese cities from bases in China initially, later from Mariana Islands. Devastating firebombing raids on Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, other cities. The high-altitude precision bombing strategy failed against Japan. Weather, jet stream winds. So, B-29s switched to low-altitude night incendiary attacks. More effective, more deadly. 2 B-29s dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ended the war without invasion, but the B-29 was plagued with problems. The R3350 engines caught fire constantly. Mechanics worked around the clock on field fixes. Many crews removed 2 guns from forward turrets, saved weight, reduced electrical load, slightly improved range. For low-altitude firebombing missions, some groups stripped most defensive armament. Tail guns only, saved several thousand pounds. More bombs, less fuel consumption. The pressurization system failed regularly. Crews often flew unpressurized at medium altitudes, accepted the discomfort. Incendiary raids required only 7,000 to 9,000 feet anyway. Mechanics discovered they could reduce engine overheating by modifying cowl flaps. Factory settings were inadequate for Pacific operations. Field adjustments helped. But the R3350 remained troublesome until war's end. Some crews installed improvised armor behind pilot seats, additional protection from head-on attacks. Here's the brutal truth. The B-29 was the most expensive weapons program of World War II, more than the atomic bomb itself, the most technologically advanced bomber ever built. And it spent most of the war catching fire, breaking down, and forcing crews to nurse it home. But it ended the war. Those 2 atomic missions. Everything else was just getting to that moment. Sometimes the most troubled aircraft delivers the most decisive blow. Douglas C-47, Skytrain, military version of the DC-3 Airliner, 2 Pratt & Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp radials, 1,200 horsepower each, entered service 1941, cruise speed 160 miles per hour, maximum speed 224 miles per hour, could carry 6,000 pounds of cargo, or 28 paratroopers, or 14 stretchers with medical attendants. Over 10,000 built for military use. Eisenhower called it one of the 4 tools that won the war. Not a fighter, not a bomber, a transport, but absolutely essential. Transport operations in every theater. The C-47 delivered supplies to frontline units, dropped paratroopers on D-Day, towed gliders into Normandy, evacuated wounded from forward airstrips, flew the hump over Himalayas into China, most dangerous transport route of the war, supplied besieged Bastogne during Battle of the Bulge, dropped supplies to partisans behind enemy lines. The C-47 could operate from rough airstrips, jungle clearings, desert sand. It wasn't fast, wasn't armed heavily, but it was reliable. And it went everywhere armies needed supplies. Field modifications adapted the C-47 for specialized roles. Many units installed cargo handling systems, roller conveyors for fast unloading, improvised bomb racks for supply drops. Crews fabricated these in theater. Some C-47s got armor plating around cockpit for operations over hostile territory. Additional fuel tanks for longer-range missions. Mechanics learned to operate the R-1830 engines at reduced power settings. Extended time between overhauls, critical when spare parts were scarce. Radio equipment got upgraded constantly. Early war radios were inadequate. Field installations improved navigation. Crews removed passenger amenities from converted airliners. Seats, interior panels, everything non-essential. More cargo capacity. Some units painted aircraft in camouflage for covert operations. Others left them in natural metal for medical evacuation. Red crosses painted on fuselage. Pilots learned to fly the hump at night. Daylight flights drew Japanese fighters. Night flying was terrifying but safer. The C-47 wasn't glamorous. No ace pilots, no kill markings. But Eisenhower ranked it with the atomic bomb, jeep, and landing craft as tools that won the war. That's because wars are won by logistics, not just firepower. The C-47 delivered the ammunition, the food, the fuel. Everything else needed logistics to fight. And the C-47 provided it. Unglamorous, unarmed, unstoppable. Douglas. A 26 Invader, the best attack bomber nobody wanted. 2 Pratt & Whitney R-2800 double Wasp radials, 2,000 horsepower each. First combat late 1944. Maximum speed 355 miles per hour at 15,000 feet. Armed with up to 14.50 caliber machine guns in nose and wings. Could carry 4,000 pounds of bombs internally. Over 2,500 built. It arrived late. Performed brilliantly. And combat units initially refused to fly it. That's the paradox. The best attack aircraft of the war that crews didn't trust at first. Ground attack and tactical bombing missions. The A-26 operated primarily between 5,000 and 15,000 feet. Fast, heavily armed. It replaced the A-20 Havoc and B-26 Marauder in some units. But crews resisted. They knew their old aircraft, trusted them. The A-26 was new, unproven, different. Initial models had visibility problems. Single-seat versions isolated pilots. Crews demanded changes. Douglas listened. Modified versions improved visibility, added navigator position, then units accepted it, and discovered it was superior to everything else. Europe. Pacific. The Invader excelled everywhere. It kept flying long after the war. Korea. Vietnam. Into the 1960s. Field modifications transformed initial problems into advantages. Units that got early single-seat versions installed improvised navigator positions, cut holes in fuselage, fabricated seats and equipment mounts, all field work. Some squadrons removed nose guns and installed bombardier position with glazed nose, better for level bombing missions. Others added even more forward-firing guns. Up to 18.50 calibers total. Mechanics discovered the R2800 engines were incredibly reliable, could operate at high power settings continuously, unlike temperamental engines in other aircraft. Some units installed rocket rails under wings, 16 rockets plus 14 machine guns, devastating firepower. Crews learned the A-26 could fly on one engine fully loaded. Return to base, something many twin-engine aircraft couldn't do. Pacific units removed some armor for weight savings in hot climates, better climb rate, speed. Here's what made the A-26 unique. Units initially refused to fly it. Too different, too new. But once they adapted, they refused to fly anything else. By 1945, a 26 units had the lowest loss rates in their commands. The aircraft was that good, and it proved something important. The best solution isn't always welcomed immediately. Sometimes crews need time to trust innovation, but when they do, perfection. The A-26 flew in 3 wars. That's not luck. That's a masterpiece that took time to appreciate. Grumman F4F Wildcat, the fighter that held the line until better aircraft arrived. Pratt & Whitney R1830 Twin Wasp radial, 1,200 horsepower. Entered service 1940, top speed 318 miles per hour at 18,800 feet, armed with 6.50 caliber machine guns in wings. Could carry 2 250-pound bombs, approximately 7,900 built including FM-2 variant. At Pearl Harbor, it was America's frontline carrier fighter, outclassed by the Zero, but it fought anyway, and won through tactics. Early war carrier operations across the Pacific. The Wildcat faced the legendary Zero at Coral Sea, at Midway, at Guadalcanal. It was slower, less maneuverable, but more rugged, better armored. American pilots learned tactics that worked. Never dogfight Zeros. Use diving attacks, hit and run. Thack-weave defensive formation. 2 Wildcats covering each other. The Zero could outturn any American fighter, but it couldn't outdive them, and it couldn't take damage like a Wildcat could. Later, the FM-2 variant operated from escort carriers, anti-submarine patrols, ground attack support for landing operations. The Wildcat fought the entire war, from first day to last. Field modifications focused on survivability. Many units added extra armor plating behind pilot seat. Factory armor was inadequate against Japanese 20mm cannons. Some squadrons removed 2.50 caliber guns. Weight savings. Improved climb rate. 4 guns were sufficient against unarmored Japanese aircraft. Mechanics learned to adjust carburetor settings for better performance at low altitude, where most Pacific combat occurred. Some carriers installed improvised arrestor gear modifications, reduced landing accidents. Wildcat pilots developed the thack weave through combat experience, never taught officially until later. but shared pilot to pilot, saved countless lives. Crews discovered they could push the R-1830 engine harder in emergency situations. Brief overboost for critical moments. Later FM2 variants got field-installed rocket rails, 6 rockets for ground attack missions. The Wildcat was obsolete by 1943 standards, but it bought time, held the line at Coral Sea, at Midway, at Guadalcanal, while better fighters were being designed and built. That's all America needed. Just enough time. The Zero was superior in 1942, but the Wildcat fought it to a draw through better tactics and pilot training. By 1943, Hellcats arrived, but the Wildcat deserves credit. It held when holding mattered most. Consolidated PBY Catalina, the flying boat that was everywhere. 2 Pratt & Whitney R1830 twin Wasp radials, 1,200 horsepower each. Entered service 1936. Maximum speed 196 miles per hour. Cruise speed 125 miles per hour. Could carry 4,000 pounds of bombs or depth charges. Armed with several .50 and .30 caliber machine guns. Over 3,300 built. Slow, vulnerable, ugly. But it saved more lives than almost any other aircraft. Search and rescue. Anti-submarine warfare. Long-range patrol. The Catalina did it all. Maritime patrol and search and rescue operations. The PBY operated across both oceans. Hunting U-boats in Atlantic. Japanese submarines in Pacific. Long-range reconnaissance. Some missions lasted 15 to 20 hours. Crews spotting enemy fleets. Directing strikes. Rescuing downed pilots from open ocean. The Catalina was also used for night bombing. Black Cat squadrons. Painted flat black. Attacked Japanese shipping and positions at night. And medical evacuation. Flying wounded from remote locations. The PBY could land on water, rescue crews from sinking ships, then take off again. Incredibly versatile despite being slow. Field modifications enhanced the Catalina's capabilities. Black Cat night attack squadrons removed all non-essential equipment. Extra armor. Additional fuel tanks for extended range. Some units installed radar for night operations and submarine hunting. ASV radar in nose. Mechanics discovered they could beef up the defensive armament significantly. Some PBYs carried up to 8.50 caliber guns. Factory installation was lighter. Crews felt vulnerable, so they added more guns. Improvised armor around critical positions. Waist gunner stations. Cockpit. Search and rescue variants carried rescue kits. Life rafts. Medical supplies. All field-fabricated solutions. Pilots learned to fly at wave-top height during anti-submarine patrols. Radar couldn't detect them against ocean surface. Then pop up, attack submarine before it could dive. Some units used the PBY as improvised bomber. Torpedoes, bombs, whatever was available. The Catalina was too slow to survive modern combat. Top speed 196 miles per hour. Any fighter could shoot it down easily. But it saved an estimated several thousand Allied personnel. Rescued downed pilots from the ocean. Located survivors from sunken ships. That's its real legacy. Not combat effectiveness, but lives saved. Lieutenant Commander James Russell flew a Catalina into Tokyo Bay during a storm. Rescued 9 B-29 crewmen. Under Japanese coastal guns. That's what the Catalina meant, going where nobody else could, when lives depended on it. Martin B-26 Marauder, the most controversial medium bomber of the war. 2 Pratt & Whitney R-2800, double Wasp radials, 2,000 horsepower each. Entered service 1941. Maximum speed 282 miles per hour at 15,000 feet. Armed with 12.50 caliber machine guns in various positions, could carry 4,000 pounds of bombs. approximately 5,300 built. Pilots called it the Widowmaker, the Baltimore whore. One a day in Tampa Bay, because training accidents killed dozens of crews. It had the highest loss rate in training and the lowest loss rate in combat. That paradox defined it. Medium-altitude tactical bombing in Europe and Mediterranean. The B-26 operated primarily between 10,000 and 15,000 feet. Striking bridges, rail yards, communication centers, tactical targets supporting ground forces. It was fast for a medium bomber. But that speed came at a cost. High wing loading, required high landing speeds. Inexperienced pilots crashed constantly during training, but experienced crews loved it. In combat, the B-26 had the lowest loss rate per mission of any American bomber, under 2%. Its speed and heavy defensive armament kept it alive. What killed in training saved in combat. Field modifications focused on increasing firepower and survivability. Many groups added fixed forward-firing 50 caliber guns in nose, 4 to 6 guns, strafer variants. Some units installed additional armor around cockpit and vital systems. Mechanics learned the R2800 engines needed careful management. They were reliable but demanded respect. Crews discovered they could increase bomb load for short-range missions, 5,000 pounds instead of 4,000. Stressed the airframe, but tactical targets required maximum payload. Some squadrons experimented with different defensive gun positions, relocated guns for better fields of fire. Pilots learned to approach targets fast and high. Use speed for defense. The B-26's landing speed was 120 to 130 miles per hour, terrifying for inexperienced pilots. But veterans handled it routinely. Groups developed specialized training programs, reduced accident rates. By late war, the B-26 had best safety record of American bombers. The B-26 Marauder killed more crews in training than enemy action killed in combat. That's a terrible legacy. But here's the truth. It was a pilot's aircraft, unforgiving of mistakes, demanding, but in skilled hands. One of the safest bombers of the war, under 2% loss rate per mission. That's extraordinary. Sometimes the hardest aircraft to master is the safest once mastered. The Marauder proved it.